described the step up from rosé to mid-level to extended maceration in terms of color, but can you describe that in terms of taste and what your mouth is telling you about the maceration or extraction from those three levels?
Yeah, what I think you're getting with the rosé option, you're not getting a lot of the tannic material. So what your mouth is going to see as far as the angles of the wine is going to be more acidity based. With the middle option, it depends on the starting material. You might have some red wine with very angular tannins to it, particularly in the seeds, but also maybe from areas where the grapes aren't really developed, or really, people can talk about physiological ripeness. We all have different ideas as to what's optimal, but let's say you have something that is maybe not as advanced in its physiological ripeness, but the flavor profile is good. The tannins might be somewhat angular. So if you pick that option, you're going to see more of the tannic elements into your angles, relative to the acidity that's going to be there. With the longer term, if you have less physiologically ripe material, I think what you're really going to see is even a more angular wine. That for some reason the less physiologically ripe material doesn't resolve itself with the longer term. So I guess if we should have maybe a two-part discussion of this. If you have less physiologically ripe material, it's just going to get more tannic as you go up the scale. Whereas with the more physiologically ripe stuff, you may actually end up with a rounder wine with the extended maceration option. Again, it's varietally dependent. There's going to be some outliers, and honestly, Lord knows why, but those are general trends. So it's rather confusing that you could say that we press early to avoid tannins, but then other people will macerate a long time in order to resolve tannins. Depending on your starting material, you might have to respond differently in order to manage your tannins appropriately.
Can you taste the difference between avoided tannins and resolved tannins?
Or the types you'd want to avoid, or at least the harsher ones?
If you have a glass of wine that was made, as you just said, to avoid tannins, so you've pressed early, versus one that was pressed later to resolve the tannins. So on one hand, they're not there. On one hand, on first they're there. On the second, they've been avoided. Can you taste the difference between them?
I can, with things that I'm comfortable working with, that I have experience working with. If you give me something that was made someplace else in another country or other varieties that I'm not familiar with, I'm not sure I could tell you just with a sample of one that this is how this was made. We had a couple of wines in the last day or two that were very aggressive in their tannins. I don't know how they got there. It could be the equipment is grinding things a little more and they press them early. It could be just that's what the variety or those varieties are. I don't know. I can't tell you by just tasting something in a vacuum. But with things I've worked with, I could tell you. I could tell you with things that I've worked with.